Do you have T111 siding on your home? You know, those 4x8 sheets of plywood that have the vertical lines cut in it? And I know what you're saying. Oh, this product stinks. Well, maybe it's not the product. Stand by. T111 siding gets a bad rap. I've been replacing and doing repairs on T111 siding for over 20 years in Florida. And I've come on homes that are over 50 years old and painted them and fixed them up and sold them. And the T111 siding was absolutely fine. It's not as bad as you think. What I mostly find when I'm coming onto a home that has T111 siding on it, it's not the material. It's the deferred maintenance by most homeowners and not paying attention to what they should be doing, especially when you find T111 in wet areas or around shrubbery. And I'm going to show you how this happens. I'm going to give you some tips on what you can do to protect your T111 siding if you have that on your home. I recently was hired to do some repairs on a home, and this is a typical T111 rot, and you can look at the window there. You can see that window case is rot as well. And the water ran down in behind the wall, and it rotted some framing in there. Typically what I find is, especially on this house, is it was owned by a bank. They didn't want to put a ton of money into repairs because it was in the process of being sold. So they had me to go in there and do a cutaway. Well, that whole sheet was rotten, and I changed that entire sheet around that window. But for the majority of the banks and people who don't have a ton of money to do the whole sheet repair, they do cutaway repairs. And if you look, you'll see what is happening in this image is somebody planted the shrubbery too close to the siding. You should have at least from the middle of the plant to the wall 5 feet. I'm sure that plant was really cute when they planted it in there over 20 years ago. And if you would look up from where the base of that shrubbery is, they planted it directly underneath the edge of the roof. Well, over the years, the plant grew. And what happens as the plant grows, it gets close to the house and its leaves encompass the house. And after it rains or on a heavy dew, it holds the moisture in and it doesn't allow the home to breathe. If you look on the wall, just above that horizontal red line, you can see where the paint is blistering and pulling away. And that's from, number one, not having been painted properly. Number two, having too much moisture there for too long. If you look down at the bottom, you can see where some of the rotten siding is. Here's just another image of vegetation growing too close to the siding. And you're supposed to have at least 4 to 6 inches of clearance from the bottom of the siding to the ground. And in this case, the bottom of the siding is actually touching the ground. The scattered paint, where you see the paint chipping away, in my determination, this house is over 20 some years old and it hadn't been repainted. Just a lack of deferred maintenance, or actually just deferred maintenance, caused the problems of this home. And if they had paid attention and had taken care of it, this house wouldn't be in the condition that it's. What you're going to have to do is, number one, you're going to have to start taking all the trim off, and be careful because you can reuse the trim over again if it's not rotten. And what I do is I strike a horizontal line all the way across the base of it, and I cut it away with a skill saw. Now that silver material you're looking there, that's a vapor barrier. Well, in this case, that has got to go away too. I have to insert blocking in between the studs, and what that does is when I put the cutaway piece on there and I nail at the bottom and I nail it horizontally across that blocking as well as the vertical studs. And what that does, it ties the bottom plate and the structural walls and the top plate and making it one uniform unit. And it keeps the house strong so it doesn't shift. This is what it looks like after I have gone in and put all the blocking in. The black is 30-pound felt. It's a vapor barrier. But if you'll look along the bottom edge of that siding, you see that silver shiny stuff? Well, that is Z-flash. And what we have to do when we do the Z-flash is that metal has to go in back of that in back of that siding, which keeps water from flowing into the wall. And it also keeps insects and termites from going up inside that area. This is a 4x8 sheet of T111 siding. I cut horizontal lengths at 16 inches in height, and at 16 inches I can get 6 pieces of siding out of one sheet of T111. Now here's the tip that I want to give you. If you're going to be replacing T111 siding as cutaways, I prime the front, the back, and the bottoms with a oil-based primer. And in this case, I use an oil-based Kills. I will tell you, you need to be in a ventilated area or do it outside, because I've had some pretty nasty reactions in priming interior homes with the oil-based Kills, even wearing a respirator. So you got to be really careful with it. But put a good coat of Kills or a good oil-based primer on that T111 siding before you install it. This is what happens when you hire someone who doesn't know what they're doing, unlicensed person. And this was a repair that was done on the home several years ago. And number one, you can see the silverback is still in there, and they didn't put any blocking in there, and they didn't do any priming. All they did was, when they cut this piece out, they painted it as close as they could and walked away and took the homeowner's money. Why it rotted. If you look at the bottom edge of that, there's no paint or primer on there. So when it rained, the water just sucked right up the side, and you can see the deterioration, and there's deteriorated wood inside that. So now that you know, you can watch and see what happens when you hire non-professional or unlicensed people to come in here and do repairs on T111 siding. This is something that you don't want to see, but because of deferred maintenance, because it hadn't been repaired for years. Yes, that is felt paper, and no, that isn't dirt or sawdust down in there. As I was nailing the dry felt in place, that is dry wood termite residue. This home is infested with dry wood termites. And what would have to happen is the house would have to be completely tented and a poisonous gas sprayed into the home to get rid of the dry wood termites. So those are some of the tips you have for taking care of T111 siding.
So there you have it. It's not the product, it's deferred maintenance. You've got a few tips on what you can do, especially if you're making repairs to your home with T111 siding. But if you have T111 siding and you haven't painted it within the last 5 years, you can apply the primer, especially around the bottom areas, at least 12 to 16 inches up, where you have a lot of splashback. Could be on a patio, could be on a deck. Make sure you put a good coat of primer on that T111 siding and a good quality paint. You will have years and years of lasting maintenance-free. But please, don't cheap out. T111 siding is a good product if you take care of it. Don't put off the maintenance. Do what you have to do. Thanks for watching.